Today's story starts with a small passenger plane heading toward the United States. Suddenly, one of the passengers gets confused and asks the flight attendant why the flight route suddenly changed. She explains that the weather on the original route has become really bad. So the pilot decides to change course and fly over the Amazon instead. Since there are only 8 passengers on the plane, nobody really pays much attention to the change. But a little later, the plane suddenly starts shaking violently. The pilot checks the controls and realizes that the GPS has completely stopped working. Even the control panel isn't responding. He immediately tries to contact the control tower. But every attempt fails because the radio system has stopped working too. And what's even stranger is that the pilot seems to have had a bad feeling from the beginning, like he knew something terrible was about to happen. While desperately trying to control the plane, he pulls out his phone and records what might be his final video. He says that the plane is hiding some extremely dangerous secrets, and ever since he discovered certain things, he's been convinced that a huge disaster could happen. Before he can say anything else, the plane suddenly starts falling rapidly toward the ground. Ahead of them, they see a massive jungle and huge mountains. The pilot tries to slow the plane down by using the tree branches to reduce the impact. After sliding through the jungle for a long distance, the plane finally comes to a stop. Surprisingly, most of the passengers are still alive. But the flight attendant, who wasn't wearing her seatbelt, dies instantly. The passengers start panicking, not knowing what to do. First, they check everyone and make sure nobody has any serious injuries, except for the flight attendant. Then 2 passengers rush into the cockpit to check on the pilot. But the moment they see him, they're horrified. Huge tree branches have pierced through his chest and come out the other side. And somehow, he's still barely alive. They try to move his seat a little so he can breathe. Suddenly, they hear the sound of a fire coming from outside the plane. Everyone quickly gets out and starts trying to put out the flames. They know that if the plane burns down completely, they'll have nowhere to hide or take shelter while waiting for rescue. After a while, things finally calm down. The 8 survivors sit together and try to figure out where exactly they are in the Amazon. They soon realize that none of their phones have any signal. So contacting the outside world from the middle of this jungle is almost impossible without a special communication device. And since the jungle stretches for hundreds of miles, escaping on foot is practically impossible. The worst part is that nobody outside even knows the plane crashed here. So no one is going to come looking for them. Suddenly, one of the passengers named Jack suggests that everyone introduce themselves. He says they need to know each other better before they can make any important decisions. Jack goes first. He explains that he works as an insurance investigator. His job is to expose people who try to commit insurance fraud. He says he was heading back to the United States after finishing a case. Next, another man introduces himself. His name is Kevin, and he's a doctor. Kevin explains that after years of working in medicine, he started his own medical equipment company. He was heading back to the US because of his business. Kevin checks the pilot and realizes that his vocal cords have been badly damaged, which is why he can't speak. But that makes the situation even more serious, because the pilot is the only person who might know how to get them out of the jungle. So they have to keep him alive at all costs. The 3rd passenger introduces herself as Christy. She says she loves traveling and has visited countries all over the world. She also posts videos about her travels on social media. But when they ask about her past, she suddenly becomes quiet and refuses to talk about it. The 4th passenger is Carlos. He says he's a professional fighter from Mexico and is heading to the United States to compete in a fighting tournament. Then a young couple introduces themselves. Their names are Danny and Amy. They claim they recently got married and are heading to the US for their honeymoon. Finally, there's an older couple named David and Lisa. They say they work at a hotel in a small town in America. David explains that he's traveling because he's supposed to have heart surgery. Now that everyone has introduced themselves, they have at least a basic idea of who they're trapped with. But they still have a huge problem. The pilot is in terrible condition and can't speak. Jack suggests that they gather all the food and water inside the plane and divide it equally between everyone. After counting everything, they realize their supplies will only last about 3 days. Jack warns them that if a storm hits, they might have to stay inside the plane. So they decide to move the flight attendant's body outside to make more room. After that, they start searching for a way out. They ask the pilot if the plane has a satellite communication device. They also try to understand how the plane suddenly went off course and ended up deep inside the jungle. The pilot tries to speak, but it's obvious he knows something and simply can't explain it. Jack then tells Kevin that since he's a doctor, he needs to treat the pilot. But Kevin refuses. He says the pilot's condition is extremely serious, and they don't have the proper equipment or medicine. If they operate on him now, he could die even faster. So they decide to wait and see if his condition improves. Meanwhile, Lisa takes the food out of the plane and divides it among everyone. After eating, everyone starts feeling a little more hopeful. Maybe they actually have a chance of surviving. Then Christy looks toward a huge mountain. She suggests that if they climb to the top, they might find a signal. But since night has already fallen, they decide to wait until the next morning. Then, suddenly, the pilot's condition takes a dramatic turn. Kevin, who had been quiet the whole time, realizes that the pilot is getting worse. He decides he has no choice but to operate on him. Kevin tells everyone to find whatever tools they can inside the plane. They gather a few basic things, including a knife and some supplies they can use to clean the wound. There's no anesthesia, but Kevin starts the operation anyway. The pilot screams in pain and moves violently. But somehow, Kevin manages to finish the procedure. When he's done, Kevin tells them that if the pilot gets enough rest, his condition might improve by morning. Later that night, everyone falls asleep. But while they're sleeping, someone wearing a mask quietly approaches the injured pilot. The masked person gets close to him and suffocates him until he can no longer breathe. The pilot slowly becomes weaker until he finally dies. The next morning, everyone wakes up and discovers that the pilot is dead. They're completely shocked because his condition had actually improved after the operation. He was even planning to tell them something important. Kevin examines the body and says there's no sign of an infection or illness that could explain the sudden death. That means his death probably wasn't natural. Everyone starts talking at once. They realize someone should have stayed awake and watched the pilot during the night. But now it's too late. In the end, they convince themselves that maybe he simply died because of his injuries. They carry his body outside and place it beside the flight attendants' body under a tree, hoping that if a rescue team arrives, they'll be able to find them. But nobody notices that the pilot's phone falls out of his pocket. Danny secretly picks it up. Amy asks him what he's doing. Danny tells her not to say anything because he doesn't trust anyone anymore. He then goes back to the pilot's body alone. He takes one of the pilot's fingers so he can unlock the phone, using the fingerprint scanner. Meanwhile, David and Lisa are talking. Lisa says she doesn't believe the pilot died naturally. She used to work as a nurse, and she says she has seen something similar before. She noticed that the pilot's face had turned dark, almost like someone had suffocated him. She believes someone deliberately killed him, but she didn't tell the others because she was afraid the killer might be one of them. David is shocked and asks who could have done such a thing. Lisa tells him they need to be extremely careful and stop trusting everyone. Suddenly, Lisa feels like someone is listening to them. She immediately stops talking. At the same time, Christy approaches Amy. She tells Amy that she knows Danny and Amy aren't really on their honeymoon. Amy finally admits the truth. She explains that she's the daughter of an extremely wealthy man. Danny used to work as a driver for her family. The two of them fell in love and ran away together because her family would never have accepted their relationship. Christy realizes they were hiding the truth because they didn't want anyone to become suspicious. Then Carlos arrives with some good news. He says he found a tracking device inside the plane wreckage. If they take it to the top of the mountain and manage to activate it, they might be able to send a rescue signal. Carlos says he can repair it by tomorrow. For the first time, everyone feels like they might actually have a chance to escape. Carlos explains that his father was an electrician and taught him everything he knows. But Carlos wanted to become a fighter, so he left his father's path behind. Jack says they'll repair the device today, and tomorrow morning they'll climb the mountain and activate it. But then Lisa suddenly brings them some terrible news. Lisa tells everyone that the food is missing. They've only been in the jungle for one day, but the food that was supposed to last 3 days is already almost gone. Jack and Christy quickly rush inside the plane and start searching for whoever stole it. They realize this wasn't an accident. Someone is deliberately taking their food. While searching, Jack notices something strange. Christy is investigating everything in a very organized way, almost like she's done this kind of work before. Jack tells her that she's definitely not an ordinary traveler. A normal person wouldn't search for clues like that. At that moment, Christy finally tells them the truth. She's actually a journalist. She travels around the world, investigating criminal organizations and exposing criminals. That's why she kept her real identity hidden. She was afraid that if there was a criminal among them, they might target her. Now everyone realizes that almost every person on the plane has been hiding something about their real life. And with their food and water disappearing, Jack says Carlos needs to stay behind and repair the tracking device. The others will go into the jungle looking for food and water. As they walk through the forest, they discover a strange blue mushroom growing on the ground. Christy examines it and immediately warns everyone not to touch it. She explains that it's poisonous, and anyone who gets too close or consumes it could become seriously ill. She also points out that mushrooms like this usually grow in very wet areas. That means there must be water somewhere nearby. After walking for a while, they finally find a small pond. But the water looks dirty and unsafe to drink. Suddenly, they hear a gunshot. Everyone is terrified and rushes back toward the sound. They discover that David was the one who fired the gun. That's when they realize David and Lisa have been hiding a weapon the entire time. They never told anyone about it because they didn't want to scare the others. Afterward, they cook whatever food they have left and eat together. Meanwhile, Jack and Christy try to clean the dirty pond water so they can drink it. For the moment, they manage to survive the day without starving or dying of thirst. But Amy can't eat, so David ends up eating her portion too. After the meal, Jack asks everyone if there's anything else they've been hiding. Like David and Lisa were hiding the gun. Carlos shows them his mask and says that's all he has. He also tells them that tomorrow he'll try to activate the GPS device and use it to call for help. That night, while everyone is sleeping, David suddenly starts feeling sick. At the same time, someone is watching them from a distance while hiding in the jungle. Then that person pulls out a satellite phone and calls someone. They say that everything is going according to plan and confirm that they're moving faster than expected. The next morning, everyone wakes up to Lisa screaming. She's crying and tells them that David is dead. Kevin examines the body and notices strange residue around his mouth. He realizes David most likely ate something poisonous. And the most likely explanation is that he ate something connected to the poisonous mushroom they found in the jungle. When Lisa hears this, she completely breaks down. She screams that someone among them is killing them one by one. But nobody understands why anyone would do this. They barely knew each other before the crash. Then Lisa reminds everyone about the pilot. She says his death wasn't natural either. She believes someone deliberately suffocated him. She admits she stayed silent because she didn't want everyone to start fighting and accusing each other. But now she remembers that she told David about her suspicions. And earlier, she felt like someone had been listening to them. She begins to suspect that whoever overheard their conversation targeted David because he was getting too close to the truth. This reveals something terrifying. Someone among the survivors has secretly had a satellite phone this entire time. Everyone starts thinking about the poisonous mushroom they found in the jungle. They realize someone could have taken some of it and mixed it into David's food while he was asleep. But things get even more disturbing when they remember that David had also eaten some of Amy's food. That means Amy might have been the real target. Now the fear becomes even worse. Every survivor starts looking at the others differently. Anyone could be the killer. The plane crash, the strange deaths, and the fact that people are dying one after another all suggest that none of this was an accident. They stop trusting each other completely and begin keeping their distance. Meanwhile, Danny secretly shows Amy the pilot's phone that he stole. They unlock it and watch the video the pilot recorded before the crash. In the video, the pilot warns them that there's a huge secret hidden inside the plane. He also says the crash was planned from the beginning. Now everyone realizes they're caught in something much bigger than a simple plane crash. At the same time, Carlos tells them that he has finished repairing the tracking device. He explains that they have to take it to the top of the mountain so it can send out a distress signal. But now that nobody trusts anyone, they have to decide who will go to the mountain and who will stay behind to protect the camp. In the end, Jack decides to stay at the camp. Carlos, Kevin, and Christy take the tracking device and start climbing the mountain. As they walk, everyone keeps a close eye on each other. During the climb, Carlos starts chewing gum. Christy notices something about him and realizes it looks like the same food that disappeared earlier. She starts suspecting that Carlos might have been the one who stole their supplies. Carlos tells them there's a chance a rescue team could reach them within a few hours. With the sun beginning to set, they head back toward the camp. Down below, the atmosphere is completely different. Fear and suspicion are spreading among the survivors. Lisa is holding the gun and keeping her distance from Jack. After David's death, she's terrified of everyone. Meanwhile, Danny gets closer to Amy. He starts acting controlling and tells her not to talk to anyone. He says he's the only person who can protect her. For the first time, Amy starts questioning him. She realizes she may not know the truth about Danny at all. She remembers leaving her old life behind and running away with him without thinking. But now, everything around her has become terrifying. Danny gets angry and tells her that he has saved her more than once. But his behavior only makes her more afraid of him. Everyone else sits around the camp, watching one another and trusting no one. Eventually, Carlos, Kevin, and Christy return from the mountain. They tell everyone that the tracking device is working and that rescue might finally be on the way. If it falls over the edge, they could lose their only chance of contacting the outside world. Christy stretches out her hand and manages to grab the device at the last second. Carlos and Kevin immediately rush over and pull her back up. After a huge effort, they finally get her and the device safely away from the edge. The incident slightly changes the mood between them. For the first time, they realize that they can actually rely on each other when things get dangerous. Carlos sets up the tracking device while Kevin checks his phone, but there's still no cell signal. Their only hope is the tracking device. After a while, the device finally powers on. It starts sending out a distress signal. Instead, she quietly watches him. Then she takes the tracking device from Carlos and keeps it with her, making sure he can't damage it or hide it. They continue climbing step by step. The higher they go, the more exhausted they become. After a long and difficult climb, they finally reach the top. But suddenly, Christy slips and falls toward the edge of the mountain. She manages to grab onto the edge and hangs there. At the same moment, the tracking device falls dangerously close to the cliff. But she doesn't say anything. Night falls, and everyone tries to get some sleep. But the fear hanging over the camp makes it almost impossible to relax. Carlos gets up in the darkness and starts training by himself. He wants to stay in shape, and it turns out he had secretly taken some of the food earlier so he could keep his strength up. Suddenly, while he's training alone, someone appears in front of him. The person is wearing a mask identical to Carlos's. Before Carlos can understand what's happening, the masked stranger attacks him with a knife. Within seconds, Carlos is dead. The next morning, everyone realizes that Carlos is missing. They start searching everywhere. Kevin says that if the tracking device was still working, it should have sent a signal showing that they needed help. But then they discover something terrifying. The device's wires were cut during the night. That means no distress signal ever made it out of the mountain. Nobody outside knows they're still alive. The group searches through the jungle again, but they find nothing. Eventually, they decide to return to the mountain and check the device themselves. Christy agrees to go with Kevin, because she believes it would be too dangerous for him to go alone. As they make their way toward the mountain, they suddenly look up and notice a huge group of birds circling over one particular area. Something clearly seems wrong. Instead of continuing straight to the mountain, they head toward the birds. When they arrive, they're horrified. Carlos's body is lying on the ground. It's obvious that someone killed him during the night and left his body there. Kevin and Christy quickly return to the camp and tell the others what happened. Another person is dead. The news causes even more fear and suspicion. Now everyone starts looking at Danny and Amy. Carlos had been sleeping close to them, so people begin wondering if they had something to do with his death. Danny tries to defend himself and says he has nothing to do with any of it. But at this point, nobody trusts anyone. Everyone keeps asking the same question. Who is killing them and why? Then Lisa shocks everyone by revealing that some of the bullets from her gun are missing. She only has one bullet left. Kevin then remembers something strange. While treating Danny earlier, he noticed a mark on Danny's back. It looks like a tattoo connected to a criminal gang. That makes everyone even more suspicious of Danny. Danny quickly explains that the mark was forced onto him while he was in prison. He says he was wrongly imprisoned and tried to start a new life after getting out. He insists that he really loves Amy and only wants to protect her, even though their relationship started in the wrong way. While everyone is arguing, the weather suddenly changes. A powerful storm hits the jungle. Heavy rain starts pouring down, and everyone rushes inside the plane for shelter. Now things start to make sense. This wasn't just an ordinary passenger plane. It was being used to smuggle drugs. The cheap ticket prices suddenly make sense too. Danny recognizes the type of shipment and explains that this is a major drug operation. The survivors realize that the crash may have been planned from the beginning. Someone could have deliberately brought the plane down because of the drug shipment. But one question still remains. Why are the passengers being killed one by one? Amy suddenly panics and runs out of the plane without thinking. Danny immediately runs after her. Kevin warns everyone not to go outside alone. Lisa grabs her gun and heads into the storm to search for Amy. Outside, visibility is almost zero. Then, suddenly, the same masked killer appears behind Lisa. The killer attacks her repeatedly. Lisa desperately tries to pull off the mask before she dies so she can discover the killer's identity. But she doesn't have enough time. She collapses to the ground. Lisa is dead. Suddenly, they hear a loud crash from above. Part of the plane's roof shakes and breaks. Then several bags fall from above. Jack opens one of them and discovers something shocking. The bags are filled with white packages. Everyone quickly realizes what they are. The next morning, everyone discovers Lisa's body. After everything that has happened, whatever trust they had left completely disappears. Now everyone suspects everyone else. But nobody has any solid evidence. Then Christy suddenly points a gun at Jack. She says she found bullets from Lisa's gun inside his bag. That means someone took the bullets and hid them in Jack's belongings. But that's not all. Christy also finds a satellite phone inside his bag. Now she's convinced Jack is the killer. Jack immediately defends himself. He admits that he did take the bullets from Lisa's gun. But he says he only did it because he suspected Lisa might be dangerous. As for the satellite phone, Jack insists it doesn't belong to him. He says someone planted it inside his bag to frame him. Kevin says they need to use the satellite phone to call for help. But Christy explains that she already tried it. The phone is locked with a special code, and without that code, they can't use it. Since the phone was found inside Jack's bag, everyone assumes Jack must know the code. But Jack keeps insisting that he knows absolutely nothing about the phone. Danny suddenly loses his temper and attacks Jack. Kevin stops him and warns that if they kill Jack, they'll never be able to unlock the phone. And without it, they may never escape the jungle. So instead, they decide to tie Jack up and keep him alive. Kevin takes responsibility for questioning him. He asks Jack about the code again. But Jack doesn't change his story. He keeps saying he's innocent and knows nothing about the phone. Under pressure, Kevin becomes aggressive and tries to force Jack into confessing. He tells her that if he were really the killer, he would have taken Lisa's entire gun instead of only taking a few bullets. And if he wanted everyone dead, he would have killed them a long time ago. Christy thinks about what he said. His story actually makes sense. There doesn't seem to be any obvious contradiction. So she makes a decision. She secretly unties Jack and lets him go. She tells him to disappear before anyone else finds him. The next morning, everyone wakes up and realizes Jack is gone. Christy acts like she knows nothing. But Danny and Amy become terrified. If Jack is innocent, or even if he isn't, he's now free. And he could come back for revenge, especially against Kevin, who had tortured him earlier. Even Kevin starts getting nervous. Danny decides that he and Amy should separate from the others. He says he doesn't trust anyone anymore. But Christy warns them that splitting up is exactly what the killer wants. If they separate, the killer can pick them off one by one. Danny refuses to listen. He believes they've already lost too many people by staying together. Meanwhile, Jack is hiding somewhere far from the camp. He knows everyone thinks he's the killer, so he can't trust anyone except Christy. Drugs. At the same time, a government investigator named Claire arrives at the airline company. She opens an official investigation into the missing plane. The company manager responds calmly, even sarcastically, claiming the crash isn't their responsibility because the plane went down in another country. But then a huge secret is revealed. Claire isn't just a government investigator. She's also Jack's wife. And Jack was actually on the plane as part of a secret mission. He had been investigating a major drug smuggling operation connected to the airline company. Claire had been searching for him the entire time. Now it becomes clear that Jack probably isn't the killer. But back in the jungle, the others still suspect him. Christy eventually goes to Jack alone. She starts paying closer attention to his words and behavior. Slowly, she begins to believe that he might actually be innocent. Jack tries to explain himself. Meanwhile, the other three head back toward the mountain to check the tracking device. When they reach it, they discover something shocking. The wires have been completely cut. That means no signal ever made it out in the first place. Christy quickly reconnects the wires. Finally, the device starts working again. A distress signal begins traveling toward a location somewhere in the United States. Back in America, rescue teams start searching for the missing plane again. But the crash site is extremely deep inside the jungle and far outside the area they can easily reach. Danny tries to calm Amy down and promises that nothing is going to happen to her. At the same time, he says the tracking device is working again and that rescue should be on the way. And sure enough, the Mexican military picks up the distress signal and starts moving toward the jungle. But while Danny and Amy stay together, everyone else is separated and watching their surroundings. Suddenly, they hear gunshots coming from the jungle. Everyone rushes back toward the camp. When they arrive, they're horrified. Danny and Amy are lying on the ground, both shot in the back. They're dead. Now only 3 people remain: Christy, Jack, and Kevin. They all look at each other with fear. The killer is still among them. And to make things even worse, the rescue helicopter is getting closer to the signal. They might finally be saved, but the killer is still somewhere nearby. Christy still suspects Jack, especially because he had been tied up and then mysteriously escaped before more people died. Kevin, on the other hand, starts suspecting that Christy and Jack might actually be working together. He thinks it makes no sense for Christy to free someone accused of murder and trust him so easily. Suddenly, a Mexican military helicopter appears above the area, but thick clouds and heavy fog make it almost impossible for the crew to see the crash site or locate the survivors. They circle the area for a while, hoping to find any sign of them. Eventually, they're forced to leave and return the next day when the weather improves. Back on the ground, the 3 survivors realize they're still trapped. There's no immediate rescue, so they start thinking of a way to make themselves visible from the air. Jack suggests creating a large signal on top of the mountain, but the suspicion between them is still extremely high. Christy refuses to go alone with Jack because Kevin has a weapon. Kevin decides to prove that he isn't a threat. He throws his weapon onto the ground, takes out all the bullets, and throws them into the water. It's his way of showing them that he doesn't want to hurt anyone. They come up with a new plan. Christy suggests climbing to the top of the mountain and starting a fire in a high place so the military can see the smoke. But Kevin refuses to go with Jack. He still believes Jack could be dangerous because of what happened between them earlier. So they agree that Christy will go with Jack. She's the one who freed him, so everyone feels she's the safest person to accompany him. During the climb, Jack struggles to walk because of the torture he suffered earlier. They stop for a while to rest and start talking about everything that has happened. Both of them are desperately trying to understand the truth behind this nightmare. Christy finally admits that she no longer believes Jack is the killer. In fact, she's starting to suspect Kevin. Suddenly, they hear a gunshot very close to the camp. Both of them freeze. His body is partially submerged in the water, and animals have already damaged his face. But the most disturbing part is what this means. Kevin was alone when he was killed, so if he really was murdered by someone, then the killer couldn't have been either Jack or Christy. At least, that's what it looks like. This only makes the mystery even more confusing. There's also no evidence that someone from outside entered the area. The jungle is completely isolated. So if none of the remaining survivors is the killer, then who is actually behind all these murders? The situation becomes even more terrifying. Now nobody can trust anyone. They decide to spend the night inside the plane. The next morning, they'll climb the mountain and start a fire to signal the military. But the fog is extremely thick around the mountain. They can barely see anything. So they stay near the tracking device and wait, hoping a helicopter will arrive at any moment. Then they immediately run toward the sound. When they arrive, they're hit with another shocking discovery. Kevin is lying on the ground. He has been shot from behind. While they're waiting, Jack finally tells Christy the truth. He isn't just an ordinary insurance investigator. He actually works as a government investigator and was secretly investigating the plane crash. Jack explains that someone discovered what he was doing, so they deliberately brought the plane down in the jungle to keep the truth hidden. He also tells Christy about his wife, Claire. Claire is an investigator too, and she's been searching for him ever since the plane disappeared. Jack knows she won't stop until she finds him. Back in the United States, Claire talks to her daughter and tells her to keep believing that her father is still alive. She promises she won't stop searching for him. Claire then travels to Mexico and pressures the military to speed up the search for the missing plane. Meanwhile, on top of the mountain, the sun starts coming out and the fog slowly begins to clear. Suddenly, Jack and Christy sense that someone is nearby. Christy tells Jack to stay where he is because his leg is still hurting. She decides to investigate the strange noise alone. But Jack gets up and follows her because he doesn't want her going alone. Suddenly, someone attacks Christy from behind and knocks her unconscious. Then the truth is finally revealed. The attacker is the real killer. The masked killer takes Christy's weapon and slowly walks toward Jack. The killer is dressed completely in black, with their face hidden behind a mask. Jack tries to escape. He keeps moving backward until he turns toward the edge of the mountain and demands to know why they're doing this and who they really are. But the killer doesn't answer. Instead, they raise the gun and shoot Jack. Jack falls over the edge of the mountain. Christy eventually regains consciousness and realizes she's still alive. But the killer approaches her too. Christy begs the killer to show her their face before she dies. The killer slowly removes the mask. Christy sees the face underneath and is completely shocked. It's someone she never expected. Before she can say anything, the killer finishes her off. The next morning, the military returns. The fog has finally cleared enough for them to see the area. The tracking signal is still active, and they finally locate the wreckage of the plane beneath the mountain. A rescue team descends into the area, but they make a horrifying discovery. There are no survivors. All the luggage and valuable items that were inside the plane are gone. After searching for a while, they find the bodies gathered together in one location. Some of them even appear to have been dead for a long time. The bodies are transported to a hospital for examination.